Alrighty, we are live. It's another Penguins Live chat here on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now social media channels, Facebook and YouTube. That's where we're going to do these for the coming season. And I guess since it's September 4th, we will do these. It's now this season. I am Dan Kingerski, and we're going to dive into several topics today. Obviously, Leon Draisaitl signed his whopper of a contract on Tuesday. Mitch Marner, Crosby, now the guys on deck. And so I guess for those of you just joining us, just catching up, you take the summer off, we'll catch you up on what we think, what we know, what we don't know about Crosby. We'll talk about some of the Penguins' potential young trade targets. Kyle Dubas has set a clear path now. He's trading salary cap space for draft picks by taking on veterans. He's also looking for young talent. We've got a few guys to start watching, including a couple of guys from the Metro Division, which would be kind of an interesting trade, especially if they came to the Penguins and worked out. And, of course, I guess 9 days. The Penguins prospect tournament will begin. In 9 days up in Buffalo, they take on... usually Boston's there. I think Ottawa is there. And, of course, Buffalo. So that's what's on tap. Plus, of course, if you're a newbie, you ask, you comment, I reply. That's how this little thing works. I know I'm doing it at noon. I've been doing them at 1 o'clock, but I have some meetings this afternoon we had to get to. So we are doing it at noon today. Let's dive into Sidney Crosby. Oh, you know what I want to do? I wanted to take one of our commenters to task. What's with the dress shirt and a T-shirt? I know. I live in Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm supposed to do my clothes shopping at Dick's Sporting Goods. I get it. Maybe it's a West Coast thing that I just adopted somewhere. But here, let me share the screen. So there's that. And yes, I've been compared to Loudermilk by people close to me. And yep. See, I don't know. I was doing it before them, and I suppose I'll be doing it after them. Let's get rid of that. How do I stop? Okay, there we go. It's just how I do. And yes, often I also have my Chucks on too. Although I also known to actually have real shoes. So let's dive into Sidney Crosby stuff. All right. Yes, JR, there is a Yoda doll, and it is a talking Yoda doll behind the booze. You'll also notice, if you look really closely, that is a Bunsen and Beaker Christmas ornament. A little Buddha doll. Over this shoulder, if I move the microphone here, you will see Rowdy Roddy Piper, Mean Gene Okerlund, Mario Lemieux. There we go. Let's fix that. So yeah, I've got all kinds of, let me center myself. I've got weird stuff. That's how I decorate. By the way, over this shoulder, that is my grandmother's senior picture. Underneath that is the 1991 the 1991 front row of the Indy 500, which was Rick Mears, AJ Foyt, and Mario Andretti. Okay, I'm getting off topic. You got me off topic, JR. Now, let's dive into this here. What we know about Sidney Crosby, and it hasn't changed in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but maybe how I phrase it or the level of detail I give you now might be a little bit different. So, what we were told by one of the sources who has been in contact with us all summer, I think that was smart, actually. And what we were told, and I kind of put it to them, I said, just give me a word. The speculation's about to start. Just give me a word. Are you comfortable, optimistic, expecting? what, give me a singular word, and that puts all of this basically to rest. And the answer I got back was, we don't want anything out there, good or bad. Now, you can parse that any way you want to, because it was kind of meant as a very blanket vanilla statement. And let's be honest. Let's be brutally honest here. You don't keep good news from people. That's my reading on it. And the only reason that speculation hasn't run amok yet is because nobody can fathom Sidney Crosby not with the Penguins. Just doesn't happen. So that's kind of what's keeping this story under wraps. If he were in, let's say, Toronto, Montreal, or one of the big Canadian cities, I promise you it would be daily. Where's the contract? Where's the contract? And they would just wear people down. We haven't done that in Pittsburgh. And upon the last blanket statement I got privately, I kind of left it alone because I suspect they're not going to say anything. Either side is not going to say anything until the first day of training camp when we all corner Sidney Crosby. And even then, he might say, not talking about it, guys. Sorry. Guys, of course, being the non-gendered, generic term for a group of people. Because there are 3 female reporters. Anyway. That'll be the first next time it's addressed. Or it'll be the press release the Penguins put out. I don't know what else to tell you on that. I think that's where we stand. The deferred money loophole that I don't think any of us really knew about. I guess it's been done a couple of times quietly and no one realized, no one made a big deal until the Carolina Hurricanes signed Seth Jarvis to that 8-year deal, and they lowered his AAV by $500,000 a year. Not significant, I guess, in the terms of an 8-year deal. But when you apply it to a very team-loyal player, I don't think there are any limits in the CBA. Let's just say the Penguins decided to pay Sidney Crosby $12.87 million. I think we all kind of were in that $10.87 headspace. That just seemed like fan media consensus. Let's say they jump it to $12.87. They could, in theory, defer $4 million for the next 3 seasons so that he gets paid $8.7 million. And then at the end, owe him $12 million and 87 cents. That it's interesting, isn't it? It's not like Crosby has played well below his contract value for 12 years. If anybody deserves a top dollar deal, it's him. But at 37, you're not going to give him, a 4-year deal for $15 million a season. At least I don't think you are, anyway. So it'll be curious to see if Fenway, which has very deep pockets, although they don't necessarily like to dip into them, they like profit, they don't like loss, if they would do something like that to structure it to keep the cap hit down, knowing full well what this guy has done for the franchise. BJ follows up on the Yoda stuff. I'm just going to dive into the questions here, and then we'll get back to the prospects and the trade. Yep, BJ, I hope you're well also. My favorite Star Wars movie. Probably Return of the Jedi. The original 3, fantastic. Level 9.5 or 10. I'm not quite so nerdy, whereas I say Empire. It really is good. Empire is really good. But I saw Jedi in the theater with my dad when I was 7 at the old Green Gate Mall Theater. And that was really, I think, the only movie I one of two movies I ever saw with him. So that was pretty cool. I was finally old enough to really grasp it all, and so Jedi has a special place. It was like my first Star Wars movie that I saw and understood. The prequels, we all just hated them, and then we saw the sequels, and we're like, oh, the prequels weren't too bad. I refused to ever watch 7, 8, 9 again. I saw each in the theater. One of my proudest theater-going moments was when I turned the entire theater against Episode 9. I led a revolt with a well-timed, oh, for God's sakes. People started chuckling and laughing. I heard a couple of applause. And at that point, with about 20 minutes to go, we all just started shredding the movie in the theater. Opening night. I feel bad if I ruined it for anybody, but if you liked that movie, you deserve to have it ruined. Negative pressure. Random question, but are the practices open to the public? Assume you mean training camp, and yes, they are. Ulterior motive to the question being, do they ever sign anything? I have a plaque from the first Crosby goal ever. No. You might catch a couple of the prospects walking from the hotel where they're staying, or some of the training camp bubble guys who don't have places in town. You might catch them walking in the front door or on the sidewalk, but you won't catch the players there. They've got special reserve spots where you and I can't go. So yes, you can come to the practice. No, you won't get autographs. BJ comes back. Am I the only one that sees way too many forwards and not enough spots? No, BJ, I just wrote about 3,000 words in the last week on that, including the, crazy, insane number of line combinations. Check that fact here. I'm going to reply to your comment with the most recent article that we did. I think you might find it worth discussing. Let's see here. Lars Eller, career highs. There we go. Penguins decision exploring crazy number of line combinations. All right, where are we at here? I'm going to reply to you here. Actually, okay, I'm just going to have to post the comment. There. David, greetings, Dan. Well, greetings, David. IR3 says also the Penguins have too many forwards. Yep, guys, read the article that I just posted there in the comments. It's essentially 19 forwards for 13 spots. Sure, they could keep 14 forwards. I don't see a reason to do that, but actually, Sullivan's typical MO is to keep 8 defensemen, not 14 forwards. Maybe they do, but either way, there are 19 legitimate NHL contenders, and then a couple other guys who, on a bad team, would be contenders. Daniel, what's up? Let's see here. Will I be at the first preseason game against Buffalo in Buffalo? I am planning on it. I have a brunch that morning. Yeah, I don't get invited to parties. So when someone invites me, I kind of have to go. And it's a moo-moo party. So we all have to wear like the big, floral house frocks. What my friends don't know is that I bought a custom moo-moo wherein it has flowers and different headshots of me. So it's just like flowers and my head. I can't wait till I walk in. So I'll probably go to brunch and then drive up for the game, presuming that they don't force me to have a couple too many mimosas. I don't think the first preseason game is going to be too important, but I could be wrong. We'll see then. Okay. Daniel wants to have Grzelcyk and Aho scratch. Well, Aho's the 7th defenseman. I'm not sure where the putting Aho ahead of Jack St. Ivany came from. I certainly don't see that as realistic or likely. St. Ivany is a big, physical, young, stay-at-home defenseman who can clean up one of the offensive defensemen. They can put Grzelcyk or they can put Ryan Graves with him, and plus the penalty killing aspect. Somebody to clear the vision for Tristan Jarry or Alex Nedeljkovic. I think that's St. Ivany's job. Negative wants to know when's my best guess on the timetable for Murashov in the NHL. 18 months. Listen, we're going to get a pretty good look at him up in Buffalo the 13th through the 16th at that Prospects Challenge. I might amend my answer after that. I generally think he's going to wait behind Blomqvist while Dubas works his magic to probably clear up one or two spots on the NHL roster. It's entirely possible that this kid is just lightning in a bottle. I have that sixth sense about him that he very well could be, but I don't know. Goalies, impossible to predict. They're either great, they're terrible, then great, or they're great, then terrible. They're mediocre, then great, they're mediocre, then you're never quite sure which way they are going to go. Gary Anderson, let's put this up here on the screen. Oh, I'll use the right finger since I'm using an Apple. Okay. The only bad part of having such a glut of forwards is that it may slow the growth of young players who seem to be ready for the NHL ice time. Read my story. Come on, y'all. I know you're YouTubers and Facebookers. Read my story. I tackled that head on. One of the line combinations I had was the tear it down mode, in which Ponomarev and Puustinen and maybe even Poulin have NHL spots, and guys like Cody Glass or Beauvillier are put to the side. No, I'm not that interested in who gets the final two defensive pairings. I think we know. Listen, the right side is set. Letang, Carlson, St. Ivany. Maybe Aho. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But then the left side is kind of a jumble. Marcus Pettersson probably takes top pairing because that will play the heavier defensive minutes. And, listen, P.O. Joseph really gelled with Letang. He's gone, obviously. So I think Pettersson takes that. I think Grzelcyk and Graves will flip-flop. Graves will get the first chance because he's on that, he's on a 6-year contract with 5 years left. They've got to make that work. You do not want to eat that many years, whether they bought him out next summer or had to, trade a prospect. You just don't want to swallow that much gristle. So Graves probably takes the spot beside Erik Karlsson, and Grzelcyk goes beside Jack St. Ivany, which could be a very nice pairing. If Graves didn't learn from his mistakes of last season, then you will see Grzelcyk beside Karlsson, or you'll see Grzelcyk beside Letang, and Pettersson goes behind. Yeah. I don't envy David Quinn in trying to figure out that puzzle. Daniel, that goalie that you got from the KHL is Murashov. Lars wants to know. See, I guess we're diving into the prospects, so we'll call this the prospects time. Can Murashov jump ahead of Blomqvist? It's going to be difficult because they're going to share the net. And Blomqvist has to get ready for that jump to the NHL. It's his time. It's his turn. He earned it. The only way Murashov jumps ahead of Blomqvist, in my thinking, one of two things happens. One, Murashov is just ridiculous. That's what Matt Murray did to Tristan Jarry. Kind of in the prospect hierarchy, Jarry was a second-round pick. Murray was, a fourth. So, but once Murray hit the ground running in the AHL, he just passed everybody. That's one way. The other way would be if Blomqvist doesn't have a good year, starts down and gets down, doesn't like the tandem, which I assume they're going to have in Wilkes-Barre. So there's that. Otherwise, all things being equal, Blomqvist playing well, he's going to be groomed for that NHL jump. IR3K thinks Dubas has done a fantastic job this offseason. Got younger a little bit, improved the bottom six, to be determined. I'd like to hear your explanation of why you think they've improved the bottom six. I think they could have a great fourth line. Lizotte, Eller, Achari. That's going to be just a dynamite whirlwind of a fourth line. Maybe no offense, though. The third line, the third line could be trouble, actually. And if we get our power play half decent, I don't say we, that's IR3, I think we can make the playoffs no problem. Don't forget IR3. Detroit is better. Ottawa has a real goalie this year. Buffalo is not going to let those other guys pass them by without a fight. Philadelphia is better. New Jersey, significantly better. So, making the playoffs this coming season will not be a 92-point affair like it was last season. The Capitals are much better. No, it's going to take, the way I see the competition in the Eastern Conference this season, there's just a big bag of teams in the middle. Some on their way up, like New Jersey, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit. Some on their way down, like the Penguins. And some kind of in that middle transition, like Washington. It's going to take 96, 97 points to make the playoffs this year. Can the Penguins get there? The power play will be one big issue. They're going to have a good power play to make the playoffs. It can't just be better. It's going to have to be good. And by good, I'm talking 21, 22% effective. That's a big jump from last year's garbage 15%. Two, is the audio cutting out? Why? It cannot be. It has to be the program. Anyway, I wonder, because everything was fixed and perfect last time. Checking my connections. Turning it down. Maybe I was over-modulating in the little system there. Okay. Let me know if it happens again. Hate that. Okay. Anyway. Might have to just buy a whole new... Okay. So what was I talking about before I threw an internal temper tantrum? Oh, power play has to get to 21, 22%. They're going to have to do two other things. One, hold leads. That is an entire mental construct. There is no reason a team can keep getting leads but not hold. I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't think Mike Sullivan can really answer that as well. I don't think the team can answer it because they just get stupid. They just got absolutely... One night they would lay back on their heels in fear. The next night they would go crazy forward, and they never found their swagger, so to speak. They never found their confidence, and as a result, the last 2 years running, they've been one of the 5 worst teams with a lead in any period. They have given up more leads in the last 2 years. I think if you combine the last two, I think they're second worst, maybe third, because Calgary and San Jose have consistently been trash as well. So they're going to have to hold leads. And third, they're going to have to be better in overtime. They're going to have to get some of these 2 points. Think about this. The Penguins had 12 overtime losses last year. Was it 11 or 12? If 4 of those go the other way, the Penguins are in the playoffs. So I don't know that they have the horses, however, to be good in overtime. By this point, by overtime, think about it. 37-year-old Sidney Crosby will have played 21, 22 minutes. By the time we hit overtime, Evgeny Malkin at 38 years old, who really was kind of sketchy in overtime last year, I would not be surprised to see the team remove him from overtime play this coming year if they can figure out what or how to replace him. Don't forget, at the end of last year, they were putting Lars Eller in there. And all the fans who were like, get Malkin off the ice, were like, Sullivan's stupid. What's he putting Lars Eller in place of Malkin for? I am making fun of you all, by the way. Because damned if they did, damned if they didn't. So maybe Eller, I don't know, maybe Kevin Hayes can play some overtime. Maybe you put Achari at center in overtime. I just don't know. I don't know if Rutger McGroarty would be a great overtime player yet, because his skating's still a bit mediocre. So what do you do in that situation? I don't think the Penguins have a team whatsoever capable of winning in overtime, but they're going to have to figure out something. Whether they take the puck into their own zone and fall on it for 5 minutes and get to the shootout, or find a way to draw some penalties, or they all just go Mighty Ducks and stack themselves in the net, so they just take shots for 5 minutes. I don't know. They're going to have to figure that out. Am I covering OBS? Yeah, these are all new cables. It might be the board. No, this mic. Whew, yeah, no, this is one of those mics that cost a paycheck or so once upon a time. And it was perfect last time. It's got to be the board. Has to be. That's disappointing. I even changed the channels. I moved from channel 1 to channel 2. Anyway, what is OBS? Negative. Oh, am I using OBS? I have no idea what OBS is. More Hockey says, don't have to be good at OT. The goal should be to win in regulation, avoid 3-on-3. Give that man a cigar. I assume it's a man. It could, yeah. However you identify, give you a cigar. Okay, I am losing my voice a little bit. Let me grab a cup of coffee real quick. I'm actually going to run 5 feet to get my coffee. There we are. Now we're going to talk about some young Penguins trade targets. No, it's not the input jack or the cable. All new cables on this setup here. I wonder if it's the software, quite frankly. I keep wondering if it is the software that kind of modulates or gets overrun with a real setup. It's frustrating. Okay. Young trade targets. Let's start. Oh, hang on. Let me. I forgot to pull up number 1. And here we go. I'll use Fox Sports. I don't know why. That's just what came up first. And we'll talk about this guy. I think there's a lot to unpack here. I think we are all kind of eyeing Nick Robertson as the ideal Penguins get. We are all looking at him like, well, he wants out of Toronto. He and Dubas had a good relationship. I can confirm that from my boys up in Toronto, that Dubas liked him a lot. Well, Dubas is running a different team now, your team, and Robertson wants out of Toronto. The Penguins want young players. It's like, just make it happen. Here's the reason that it won't happen, or the reason that it hasn't happened. Let's assume Dubas has interest or would have interest if a deal could get done. We don't know that because no one has actually confirmed that. I've been trying, believe me, and I have some ins up in Toronto, and I still can't get a definitive. Yeah, the Penguins would do it anyway. Toronto is looking, first of all, this season at a lack of left wingers. Well, there's Robertson. There's a big opportunity with the Toronto Maple Leafs for Robertson this season. They're basically telling him, get over yourself. You're staying here. We need you. 2, compounding this season's need for a left wing is the impending free agency of Mitch Marner next summer. So, look, Brad Treliving is a solid GM. He's made some mistakes in Calgary. I think he would probably tell you that. The end of the day, they need Nick Robertson more than they would get for him in a trade. So there's your stalemate. Now, what I wrote a couple of weeks ago, and it was unfortunately ripped off in multiple places, and I had one site delisted from Google, and another site kicked off Facebook for just repetitively stealing our work. I submitted a dozen copyright infringement applications. I think I was successful on 10 or 11 of them. 10. 2, I didn't even bother with the other 2, but that was enough to get them booted off of Facebook. And they sent me an email, hey, can you let us back on, please? Would you withdraw your complaints? I was like, no. I digress. The thing with Robertson, it's the Penguins would have to give up not just the third-round pick that would, let's just say the Penguins made the RFA offer sheet. Toronto's going to match it. And now now you really can't do a trade. So what the Penguins would really have to do is offer that third-round pick and something Toronto could use. In my article, I'm like, okay, would you trade Valtteri Puustinen and a third-round pick for Nick Robertson? That's kind of what we're looking at. In fact, Puustinen might not be enough to get it done in that scenario. The funny thing, I hate to play amateur GM. I was ping-ponging other ideas around in my head, and it would require eating salary from one of the Penguins' veterans and maybe more. It's just going to be Toronto. It's going to be Trey Living's call on what happens with Nick Robertson. I don't think it's Nick Robertson's call. I hope Justin says, I don't understand why the Penguins don't go after Robertson. I hope I explained that for you. Yeah, I might have to go to Guitar Center and upgrade the board. So you're saying it's Toronto who isn't talking, not I folks, don't put words in my mouth. I just explained the entire situation. Toronto shut down Robertson. Trey Living did back in May. He shut down the trade request right then and there. And that's why I kind of stopped writing about it so much. I mean, the situation still exists. Robertson hasn't softened, but Trey Living has put his cards on the table. Toronto has their cards out, and to hell with anybody else. They're going to do what's best for them, and what's best for them is Robertson unless somebody makes it better for them. I'm sure they've had conversations. Daniel would be sick to his stomach if Puustinen goes. I'm going to tell you something here the next few years, handful of years. You're going to have a lot of heartbreak like that. You're going to have a lot of young players you get attached to, guys you see the world for. Wow, this guy would be an all-star if Just that little thing. Or if the coach would just give him this opportunity or that opportunity, it's going to happen a lot in the next 5 years. I'll give you my 2 cents on Puustinen. Taylor Haas told me, because she's been like studying Finland with these players. The Finnish announcers called him Little Phil Kessel. That's both a compliment and an insult. I guess it's a complisalt. And it's because he's got this offensive game. He's got this. Watch Puustinen's wrist shot. The stick bends like that. He slides his bottom hand up to get more whip because he's short. He slides that bottom hand up and just whips it. But he only had 20 points in 50 games last year. He's already 25. There's a fine line between late bloomer and not blooming, or reaching your ceiling. Puustinen is not good defensively. He's not tough to play against. He's struggled with consistency at every level. So, God bless you if you want to buy a Puustinen jersey. I'm just saying maybe there's a real chance Puustinen gets waived at the end of training camp. A legitimate chance because of the glut of forwards. So you might want to make sure that number is Velcro, or the name on the back is Velcro, and you can pull it off. Steve Nash checking in. I assume you're not the NBA coach, but hey, welcome to have you. I don't disagree. I do wonder if the millions saved by carrying both means they can means they can bolster the rest of the lineup. Hard to win now without ELC contributors. You're exactly right on that last point. And I do think if Dubas has millions to play with, he's not going to go out and get a splash player during the season. Maybe at the trade deadline. That would be a very interesting moment for Kyle Dubas. Let's say the Penguins are in third place and they're going to make the playoffs. Things are good. Jari is having the type of year that we know he's capable of having. They've held leads. The power play is clicking at 20% or so. They've been competitive. Sullivan got the line combinations right out of training camp, and it's been this magic carpet ride. Dubas has, I think right now, with 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goalies, the Penguins would have just about $2 million in cap space. They could increase that. Let's say they sent Beauvillier or Cody Glass to the American League to keep Puustinen or one of the young players, Ponomarev. The difference there might bump the Penguins up to about 2.2, 2.3 million in salary cap space. What would Dubas do at the trade deadline? Would he go get a splash player, give up a second or a third round pick to give Crosby one more shot at the cup? Or would he hold firm? Maybe trade away that space, taking on a marginally serviceable veteran and getting another draft pick in return. I dare say that might cause Dubas some sleepless nights, wrestling with that one. Young players to take a look at. Okay, so Nick Robertson was in fact number 1. Here's a guy. Actually, there's 2 more I want to pull. Give me a second here. Oop, don't want to pull up that photo. Taken by the wrong people. Here, let's, here's another one I know you all kind of want to talk about, and that would be this guy from the Anaheim not-so-mighty Ducks, Trevor Zegras. There is a real push-pull in the NHL, behind closed doors, in GM circles, about this guy. There's an absolute push-pull on Trevor Zegras because the knock on him, I'm telling you bluntly, the knock on Zegras was that he didn't take the game seriously. That's not just because of scoring some Michigan goals, although it probably didn't help with some of the old school guys. The knock on him was that he didn't take the game seriously. Can you imagine a guy like that with Mike Sullivan? His offense is unquestioned. Can he put together a two-way consistent game? All of those things are quite interesting. Anaheim seems to be stockpiling all this young talent and still going nowhere with it. Something's broken out there. GM Pat Verbeek is going to have to make some hard decisions or figure out where that problem is and pull it out by the roots. Nevertheless, Zegras would be interesting if you can surround him with Sidney Crosby, a guy who would override his lack of seriousness, his unseriousness. Maybe teach him how to be that consummate professional who helps his team win even when he's not scoring. And I tend to think that I think Verbeek was posturing earlier in the summer when Zegras' name was bubbling on the trade market. Verbeek kind of tamped it down because the offers were garbage. I wonder, I don't know, and I wonder what it would take to pry him out of Anaheim. It might take a serious veteran to be a leader in Anaheim. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Let's see here. Another young guy to kind of watch would be very, very interesting. Let's pull him up. I feel like drum roll, please. And you all might groan on this one. I'm going there. He is Capo Caco of the New York Strangers. Obviously, high draft pick. Top of the first round, right? Has the talent, has the ability, hasn't put it together with the Rangers. It took Lafreniere a few years to do it. I think the Rangers would like to have that salary cap space. I think they need that salary cap space after they were unable to deal Jacob Trouba. So that's another guy to keep an eye on. Fourth name I'll toss out there, and I was talking with my Philadelphia guy, John Bailey. Morgan Frost. Again, one of Ron Hextall's first-round picks with the Philly Flyers. I think his career, what did he have, 29 or 32 points in 71 games last season? Offensively gifted, but just soft as butter a lot of times. In fact, when the team needed goals at the end of games, he was on the bench last season. He did not earn Tortorella's trust whatsoever. And you wonder if a new environment, new space, again, I go back to the Sidney Crosby effect, could a guy like that come in and just learn at the feet of Crosby and take his career to the level that it could get there? We suspect that Morgan Frost is available for about a song and maybe a dance as well. So it wouldn't cost much, but would Dubas give up a draft pick to get it done? Would he give up a third-round pick to make that happen? Considering that he took on Cody Glass to get a third-rounder, do you give a third-rounder for a guy like Frost? These are the things, I think we as fans, as media, we can talk about. I think Dubas's plan is in place where unless he's sold on a young guy or gets him basically for free, you're not going to see it happen. Yeah, I'm kind of Jay's like a big yes on Frost. I'm there with you. That's the kind of guy I want to take a chance on. Not a guy who has failed to really crack the NHL in 5 years. Not a guy who has had a chance and didn't do a whole lot with it. I want to get Frost out of Philly and let's see then. No softies. Where are the young Sam Bennett types, Cal asks. Oh, Cal. Cal, you just opened a can of worms, my friend. In short order, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on this. I'm not going to go full Don Cherry on you. The game at the youth level has changed dramatically, especially as more and more Americans kind of put pressure on the Canadians to compete. The number of gold medals the World Junior team, the USA World Junior team has won recently is pretty surprising. Canada is going nuts over it. Rutger McGroarty captained the team last year that won the gold medal, and Canada, what did they finish? 6th, 7th, 8th place? It's the game is about skating and offense, and you're not going to see the plethora of the Sam Bennett types. Those Saskatchewan farm boys who made their living busting some jaws, and the gritty Alberta boys who knew how to get in the corner, use the butt end of their stick, agitate opponents, play rough. Those guys are a bit of a dying breed. I tend to think that everything has a snapback, right? I tend to think when some guys who can skate but maybe not score as well begin to realize they can get to the show by being rough, I think you'll see a few more guys be available. But right now, Jay, they're just not coming up. They're not coming through. The Penguins kind of got one of those guys with Tanner Howe. He's a little Brad Marchand, ball I hate, drive you nuts type. Realize who they traded. Braden Yeager, 14th overall pick. Yeager won the Sportsmanship Award 2 years running. He was not a guy who was rough and tough or, tough to play against. Furthest from it. So that's just who was taken. The Buffalo Sabres grabbed the kid I had a good conversation with. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He and I grew up as carny rats with our grandfather. Every summer. Oh, for gosh sakes, I have to give me a second. Time out. Dan has to look up his name. It's going to drive me insane until I see it. Give me a second. Zach Benson. The Sabres grabbed him at 13th. He's tough mentally, but what is he, 5'9", $150, $160 now maybe? So he was small. Let me turn off R2-D2. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of grit to be had in last year's draft, in this year's draft. It's the way the game is going. Okay, Dan, I know we moved on, but where does Philip Larson stand in the organization? For those of you who don't know Philip Larson, he was was he 7th round pick of Colorado or maybe even Toronto. Goaltender, spent the last few years in Sweden, and Dubas brought him back. One of the first things he did, I think back in April, they signed Philip Larson, the goaltender. But since then, they re-signed Nedeljkovic. They got Murashov over. They've got Taylor Gauthier. Is Tommy Napier still in the system too? I looked him up the other day, and I didn't see where if he'd signed anywhere else. So I don't know what to tell you. There might literally be 8 goaltenders and 3 nets. I don't know where Larson slots in. Haven't seen him play. I tend to think he's going to take a look at this situation. If he doesn't report to camp, I wouldn't be surprised. Or if they loan him back to Sweden, I wouldn't be surprised. He'd probably make a whole lot more money playing in the Swiss Elite League than he would playing in Wheeling. Not to mention, it's probably a whole lot more comfortable to live in Sweden, Stockholm or wherever his team was. than I like Wheeling. By the way, you wouldn't believe the number of cranes in operation in downtown Wheeling. They are building fast in downtown. It's 20 years after the casino, 20 years late, but better late than never. And it has the seeds of a bustling little town down there with some nice apartments and plenty of, some bars starting to cater to some people living there. I rode through it a couple weeks ago, and I was genuinely surprised and impressed. David says power play and goaltending is key. I would say yes. Oh, Tommy Napier playing for the Bristol Pit Bulls? Where the Bristol Pit Bulls? I have no idea what league that even is. Okay, Gary, what do I think Sully Dubas, or do I think that Sully and Dubas will have a competition for the starting number 1 or 2 goalie? No. I think that is probably the one decision Sullivan doesn't have to spend 2 minutes on in training camp. You're going to see probably a 60-40 split in favor of Jari. You might even see if Jari is good in camp and good in the preseason, you might see Jari take 70-30. Here's why. With the glut behind Tristan Jari, let me rephrase that. As I get to the conclusion in my head, I'm going to twist it. I don't doubt the Penguins I don't doubt that Dubas would like to trade one of the NHL goalies. So whichever one that they might be getting some nibbles on will play more than they were expected to play. So if it's Jari, he might get a 70-30 split. If it's Nedeljkovic, you might see a full 50-50 split. Absent trade considerations and future considerations, I would expect to see Jari take a 60-40 split because he is the more talented goalie. If he doesn't come through or when he falters, Nedeljkovic could easily flip that to a 50-50, 60-40 split in his favor, just like he did last season. So what if Murashov or Blomqvist has an unbelievable camp in preseason? What would you do? I mean, you're not going to waive Nedeljkovic, are you? You're not going to waive Tristan Jari. So I don't know. I don't think it's realistic to expect one of those two to make it the NHL out of camp. I think they're going to have to play some real games in the AHL. Murashov have to get used to the grind, the professional North American grind, and then we'll take a look. Okay. Hockey Cards says, tough schedule to start the season. Yep, here. In fact, I just wrote that October is going to be September, October. Make or break for the Penguins. It's coming. Take a look. There's the article that I'm just putting it out there now. The Penguins will go through the very stops that submarined last season. First road trip, Detroit, Toronto, Montreal. They're going to have to go through Toronto. Don't forget about that December 16th beatdown they suffered in Toronto on Hockey Night in Canada, 7-0. That's when I pushed the panic button. That's when there's something deeply wrong with this team. That was the night that Erik Karlsson kind of called out some teammates. That was when Lars Eller flat out said, kind of criticized the team effort. And some other guys sure said some things under their breath that wasn't on the record. There was some real rancor that night. And it never got better. Maybe they gelled at the end of the season, but they were never a good team last season. So Toronto was the iceberg. Then where did it all really go wrong? when they had a chance to get back in the playoff race, Dubas put down his final deadline, his final edict. Listen, go out west, win some games, and we keep Jake Gensel. What did they do? Good win against Vancouver. Then they followed it up by getting shut out in Seattle, blowing a multi-goal third-period lead to the lowly Calgary Flames. And then they just got hammered in Edmonton 6-1. Decision was made. That was the night I asked Sid about, okay, trade deadline's coming up. What do you think? You guys just, he and I talked it through. I had a little comeuppance. That was a hardball question in a tough moment. And I don't think I would do it again, and I'm not sure he would give the same answer again. And I look forward to seeing him in a couple of weeks. So they go through Edmonton and Vancouver. They have 12 games in October. Don't forget about the Thanksgiving corollary. The teams that are in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving, 76% of the time make the playoffs? They really could be like 4-8, or 4-6-2, 3-6-3 in those first 12 games in October. They really do have a tough schedule. Detroit, Toronto. Okay, you figure they're better than Montreal, but Montreal's going to be all, jacked up on Mountain Dew like a spider monkey because it's early season. All those young kids playing in front of their home fans, singing ole, 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 ole. They're going to be just playing out of their skates. Montreal also beat the Penguins pillar to post a few times last season, if not for Sidney Crosby's hot dog power one night. What did he have, 3 or 4 points? He had a hand in every Penguins goal. He was the only player on the ice for the Penguins worth a spit. And they somehow escaped with a 4-3 win. That was January. And then they go out west. And they've got the Rangers on opening night. They could lose a lot of games quickly, and they could be out of it by American Thanksgiving. They could be 6-8 points back. And then what do you do if you're Kyle Dubas? Knowing full well that it shouldn't be, but it is, given the glut of the teams in the middle. If you're 6 or 8 points back after 18 games or 20 games at Thanksgiving, do you run up the white flag? And that is what I wrote today. It's why it's so crucial for the organization to get September and October correct, to get the roster decisions correct. And I don't know what those decisions are. We're going to take a look at the chemistry and the possibilities, in training camp and in preseason. Somebody could surprise and really wreck everything, but they're going to have to figure it out because they might not get a redo. They might lose a few players on waivers. And I know Dubas is okay with losing players on waivers, but what that does is it takes away your depth because the Penguins don't have depth in prospects or young players at Wilkes-Barre Scranton yet. They've got the Tristan Bros and the Ville Koivunens. Those guys aren't ready to take that leap to the NHL. Bros is closer than Koivunen, significantly closer. But if you lose your depth to the waiver wire, now you're in trouble. So I don't know what they're going to do. It's fascinating to me. I think this is going to be the next 3 months are going to be just enormously fun to cover from a I don't know what's going to happen next standpoint. Let's see here. David says Dubas is doing a great job this offseason. I love it. Okay. David, do me a favor. Tell me why you love what Dubas is doing. I think the McGroarty trade certainly changed the paradigm of the offseason. But otherwise, there are 4 big additions, David, where Anthony Beauvillier, Matt Grzelcyk, Kevin Hayes, and Cody Glass. If I had told you they got those 4 players at the trade deadline last year, you would have flipped the table and said, this is terrible. So What about those players makes you think that this is a better team? And I'm not putting you down. I'm curious what fans think about that, because when you lay it out like that, the roster is a step down. I think Michael Bunting and Evgeny Malkin will be a very good pairing with Rickard Rakell as that second line. I thought they were really good at the end of last year. That's a reason for hope. I think Rutger McGroarty is a reason for hope. I think Jack St. Ivany, even Tristan Jarry rebounding from the tailspin last year are all reasons for hope. I think the fourth line could be fun. Lizotte, Eller, Achari. Or maybe it's Lizotte, Hayes, Achari. Or maybe it's, Ponomarev, Lizotte, Achari. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to figure it. But they've got some Tasmanian Devils who can play that fourth line and not chip in a whole lot of offense, but who are fast, tenacious, and fun. So there are reasons for hope, but overall, understand that the roster is probably a step below where they started last year. Let's see what Gary says. Don't you think this will be one of the most exciting training camps? Oh, yeah. I don't think there's been a more exciting training camp that I've ever been around. Okay, Steve, if Cody Glass gives them what Ryan Poehling gave them, that's a good thing. Can he kill penalties? Steve, I would not in any way, shape, or form compare Glass and Poehling. Poehling was an incredibly fast and a bit gritty. He had some size. Glass doesn't have those things. Glass isn't hard to play against. He's not fast. Those are very different players. Wow, we've done an hour already, and we're still going strong here. We haven't gotten a lot of viewers. That's probably my fault. Hopefully has the sound been better since that early pop? What I did actually was I turned down the sound on the board, and I wondered if that was causing some input issues. Okay, last one here, folks. Got maximum draft picks. Helps in the future and makes us a younger team. Bottom six is a bunch of hungry players proving something now. Colton. I understand Gen Z has this war with punctuation. My God, Colton, use some. I'm trying to read this, and it's just, I'm lost what you're trying to say, my guy. A bunch of hungry young players in the bottom six. You mean like Kevin Hayes and Cody Glass? Anywho, flexibility, yes, the Penguins will have that. Come the draft and trade deadline for more picks. Yeah, that last part is certainly true. Penguins will have a glut of draft picks. Temper your expectations, though, my peoples. Understand that a second or third round pick is not going to hit the NHL on average. Actually, on average, they're not going to hit the NHL, first of all. The odds are against them playing in the NHL. More fail than succeed by a pretty substantial ratio. Two, the ones who do get there generally are going to take, let's call it 3.5 years. They're going to play another year, maybe 2 in junior, like Harrison Brunicky. Brunicky can play in juniors 2 more years. And then he begins his professional ascent. So if he plays a 1.5 years in Wilkes-Barre, he's 3.5 years away. He was the 44th overall pick. So understand these draft picks Dubas is getting now. By delaying that St. Louis Blues 2025 second-round pick to 2026 to get that third rounder, he's not going to see, the Penguins aren't going to see that second-round pick in an NHL sweater until the earliest, in all likelihood. I mean, there are always exceptions, of course. The earliest, 2029. Think about that. 29-30 are when you're going to see these seeds that Dubas is planting now. I understand you get excited by the potential, but don't go eating the tomatoes before the seeds have begun to grow. War with punctuation. The bottom six is rough. They could use another move. I tend to... It's funny. I mean, they've got too many players, but maybe they do have the right players. I was kind of expecting Ponomarev to kind of have a free ride to the NHL roster this year. I really was expecting that. Now, he suffered a pretty serious high ankle sprain in March, which could hinder his start to this season. But listen, Koivunen is not ready. Bros has some of the tools. I could see him being ready sooner than later. But Tristan Bros, go back to my original point, was a 2021 second-round pick. And he might hit the NHL roster by 2025. Okay. I said last one, but here, I'll do one more for JR. Since JR, you were the first and you noticed Yoda, you get the closing salvo. What are the chances of Bunting, Malkin, and Raquel staying together all year in the second line and all hitting 20 goals each? You know, it's funny you say that. That's what I'm projecting. I loved that. I thought Bunting made Malkin better. I thought Bunting made the line better. And it confused me. Or, actually it didn't. Penguins fans, you all can get a little stuck on an opinion and not roll with the changing situation and changing information. By that, I mean Rickard Rakell. The number of fans who have kind of angrily advocated getting rid of Rickard Rakell this summer. He had an abhorrent start to last year. No two ways about it. But after those 23 games where he was just fighting the world with the puck on his stick, he was just in the quicksand, couldn't get out. When he came back after that injury, he scored at career norms. So there's no reason to worry about Rakell. Here's a guy who has a 34-goal season on his resume. If that line clicks, you could see Rakell really pop in some incredible numbers. If the power play actually bothered to, get in gear, you could see very respectable numbers from Rickard Rakell. I do think 20 for Bunting, Malkin, and Rakell. And there will be times when Sullivan feels like the team needs a little bit of a change up, just a little bit of a tweak, and you'll see Rakell up with Crosby and maybe Brian Rust come down with Malkin, and that will work. That could work as well. So I'm losing my voice. I've got to train our brand new Nashville writer. Oh, by the way, it's not hockey only, but Seattle is coming. Kids, it's my pleasure. We will do this again next week, hopefully at our normal time, 1 o'clock. Actually, next Wednesday is the 11th. I'll be packing for Buffalo. We'll have probably a sneak into Cranberry and watch maybe a captain's practice or so to let you know what's going on. In the meantime, it's always my pleasure. Thanks, kids. Have fun.